Hello everyone. Let's talk about the next knowledge area, which is your communication management. A brand new knowledge area, and I would say one of the most interesting one. Why? Because this is the life of a project manager. What we really do, we want to make sure that the stakeholders get the best communication, best information at the right time in the right format. So an effective project manager's job is actually spent in this communication management knowledge area. So prior to going into communication management, let's see what we discussed in the last knowledge area, which was your resource management. In the resource management side, first there were I think 5 or 6 processes, I believe it was 6 processes, where we started with the planning of resource management. We moved from planning to resource management to the estimate activity resources, which was all about, what are the type and number of resources you need. Then we moved to the executing process group, where we went ahead and started acquiring for those resources. When we had those resources, when we acquired, then it's your job as a project manager to make sure that you develop your team. You make sure that the team is building to gelling together. If they have issues, some kind of conflicts, you need to try to resolve them. You provide them with trainings. You talk about the recognition program, and all of those things were done in the developing process. After that, you started working towards the managing process. You were doing a comparison of planned versus actual. When I say planned versus actual, I was referring to planning of the actual people, like what they were supposed to do and what they actually did. The team performance assessment was one of the primary important concept in that. From there, we moved to the control process, the control resources, which was the last process, where your focus shifted from actual people to the other physical resources, like your equipment, your materials, your supplies. You wanted to make sure that you control those things. You want to make sure that there is proper utilization of those resources. So that was all about the resource management. Good one, lot of good questions from the tools and techniques. And now we would be going into this new knowledge area, which is all about communication. My personal favorite. Why? Because that's all I do. Try to talk to people, communicate all the information at the right time in the right format. So let's see. So first, we would be discussing what does this knowledge area involve. We will talk at high level, whatever things are there in this particular knowledge area. From there, we will move to the the processes. There are just 3 processes in communication management, which is a good thing, right? But these 3 processes are very important from the concept side. So you need to understand this from the concepts. Build your concepts. Then once you build your concepts, then we would probably do a high level overview of these ITTUs. Once the high level overview is done, then we will move into next set of videos. Each and individual process will have their own set of videos. We'll discuss the inputs in much more details. We'll discuss the tools and technique in much more details. And finally, we'll discuss the outputs also in much more detail. Always remember, the concepts in this is very, very important if you compare it with the actual ITTOs. Then finally, we will end up with the study focus, where we will do a quick revision of whatever things we learned. And once the revision is done, we'll probably move towards the closure phase, where we will formally, close this particular knowledge area. So let's see, what does this knowledge area involve? We have 3 processes and 3 process groups in this knowledge. So that's a good thing. So 3 process groups which are involved are the planning. Second, it's the execution. And the third, it's the monitoring and controlling. So we have processes in the 3 process groups. Same just like the resource management, where we had 3 processes, and all those 3 processes were part of planning, execution, and monitoring control. So, but another thing which you need to understand is that this particular knowledge area is closely linked with the stakeholder management. Why so? To whom you are actually communicating. you're communicating all this information to the stakeholders, right? So both these knowledge areas are actually run in parallel with each other. So let's see, what does this involve? Involvement involves planning, collection, creation, distribution, storage, retrieval, management, control, monitoring, and ultimate disposition of project information. So this is all about the project information. You also have to plan for it, you also have to collect it, you also have to create it, distribute it, store it somewhere, manage it, retrieve it from somewhere, wherever you have stored, and finally ultimate disposition of project information. So it's like, heavily involved, I would say, as in the life of a project manager. This knowledge area, you do it almost on a daily basis. Like me personally, I'm a program manager, and I do that, all the time. Check, information should be accurate and timely. Make sure you have to give the right information. Don't give wrong information. If you don't know the correct answer to that a particular question, tell them that you are working towards it and you will get back to them shortly. But make sure you are providing the information in an accurate and timely manner. The word timely is also very important. Like for example, if you don't provide them information on a timely manner, there might be a case that that particular information is no longer valid or no longer needed. So make sure that you are sending the information in an accurate and timely manner. The life of a good project manager, 90% of the time, effective project manager time is spent in communication. That's what I do. I make sure that I'm communicating my stakeholders, my internal team, my sponsors. I keep them updated all the time. I do that on a daily basis. You as a project manager has to be proactive. Distribute the information proactively. Don't wait. You have to send the information. Don't try to hide any information. That's bad. That's unethical. You will be going against the code of ethics and professional responsibility, which was something which we discussed in the introduction management knowledge area. So always remember, wear the PMI's hat, wear the project manager's hat, and make sure that you are proactive. Responsibility. Stakeholders should be kept informed throughout the life of the project. And whose responsibilities it is? It is your responsibility to make sure that you are keeping them informed. That's why the stakeholder management knowledge area and this communication management knowledge area runs parallel with each other. As far as the strategy is concerned, communication management consists of two parts. The first part is developing a strategy to ensure communication is effective for stakeholders. So first, you develop a strategy. You make sure that right information is being sent to the right folks, right? So you have a strategy in place for that. Once you have that, the second part is carrying out the activities necessary to implement that strategy. Then you have to implement that strategy. How you will do it? What are the activities to do that? All those things would be part of your strategy. So it's a two-step process. First process, you will develop the strategy. Second process, you will implement that strategy. What are the activities you will do to implement that strategy? So let's see, there are three processes in communication management. Let's see what are these. Ensuring that the information needs of the project and its stakeholders are met throughout the development of artifacts and implementation of activities designed to achieve the effective information exchange. So what you are basically doing here, your main goal is to make sure that you are exchanging the information in a proactive and timely manner, right? That's the life of a project manager. It's your job as a project manager to make sure that the information needs of the stakeholders are being met. And even if it is some kind of artifact or even if it is some kind of status, you should be the one who is informing and communicating the stakeholders in a timely manner. There are three processes. First, we will be discussing the planned communication management, which will be all about how you will manage the communication, how you will monitor the communication, everything about how. Then we will manage the communication, which means you will be going out and sending those status reports, sending that communication. All that is part of your managed communications. And finally, you will be doing the monitor communication, which will be a comparison of planned versus actual. What you really planned and what you actually did, that's monitor communications. So there are three processes in communication management. As we discussed, let's do a high level description of those. Planned communication management will give you the output as the communication management plan, which will tell you how you would be doing, how you will retrieve the information, how you will, send that information, how you will store that information, all about how. Managed communication is about creation, collection, distributing the project information. So whatever you planned over there in planned communication management, you will actually go ahead and do that work, do that planning, convert that planning into the real implementation, the real work which is actually supposed to be done. And once you are doing it, then it's your job as a project manager to monitor those communications. Did the stakeholder get the report which he or she was supposed to get on a weekly basis or not? Why not? What are the issues? What are the root cause of those problems? So this is something which you do throughout the project life cycle. So this marks the completion of the introduction section of communication management. Next, we would be going into a much more detailed video about the planned communication management, where we would be discussing about what are the things, how we are doing it, how we are managing the communications, how we should control the communications, and we will be discussing the ITTOs in much more detail. Thank you. Stay tuned. Hello everyone. So now let's discuss the first process of communication management, which is the planned communication management. In the last video, we went ahead and we did a brief introduction about all of these processes, what we really do. But this is the one where we would start planning for our communication. So let's see, what do we have in this? It's a planning process that generates the communication management plan. So our output would be the communication management plan. It's a planning process, so our process group is planning. This plan specifies what information will be distributed and updated in what format, how often, and to which stakeholders or groups. So it's a lot of information. This process defines what information will be distributed and updated in what format, how often, and to which stakeholders or group. Like for example, let's say you are one of a critical resource and you need a report on a weekly basis. It's not necessary that some other stakeholder on the project would need the same report on a weekly basis. He or she might need in a different format, and not on a weekly basis, but let's say on a monthly basis, right? Or on a bi-weekly basis. So this is where you would define all of these nuances. You will talk to the stakeholders, you will discuss with them what all things they really need. And of course, in what format, how often, and things like that. It's usually performed very early on the project because the early you discuss with the stakeholders, the early you discuss their communication strategy, the better it is for you. Benefit. The key benefit of this process is a documented approach to effectively engage stakeholders and present relevant information in a timely manner. Make sure that timely is the word timely is very important here. If you send a particular report, after a while, which has no significance about it, then it's a waste of time for everyone. You don't want to do that, right? And it's an ongoing effort. This process is performed periodically throughout the project as needed. So to be honest, I plan for communications almost on a daily basis. I make sure that if there are things are not going as planned, I will quickly plan for it and I will start communicating accordingly. Then dependence. depends heavily on the identify stakeholder process in the stakeholder management knowledge area. To be honest, the stakeholder management knowledge area and this particular knowledge area runs in parallel with each other. So you are communicating the information to stakeholders. I could repeat the same sentence, that stakeholders get that communication. So there would be many things which are actually common in both communication as well as stakeholders, because communication is basically for all the stakeholders. So let's see what are the ITTOs of plan communication management, but just keep one thing in mind, that ITTOs are not that important for specifically for this process, but the concepts are. So let's see. In the inputs, we have the project charter and the project management plan. Of course, we have the project documents and EEF, OPA, which are our common ones. In the tools section, we have our expert judgment. We have communication requirements analysis, the technology which you use, the communication models and methods, interpersonal and team skills, data analysis, and the common tool which is our meetings. Output, you will have your communication management plan, and rest would be just updates, your plan updates and the document updates. So let's now discuss these inputs in little more detail. First, we have the project management plan. So basically from the project management plan, we need two specifics, two sub-plans, which are our resource management plan and the stakeholder engagement plan. So resource management plan and stakeholder engagement plan. First of all, you need to do the communication to stakeholders. Your team, your resources are also part of the stakeholder list, right? And you are communicating this information to, of course, to stakeholders. So you definitely need the stakeholder engagement plan. And your resources are also part of it. You need to communicate to them also, right? So you need resource management plan also as an input. Then as far as the project charter is concerned, we already discussed this in the integration management knowledge area. And if you remember, the high level key stakeholders are actually mentioned in the project charter. So to whom you are planning about the communication, that information, it's all about stakeholders, right? And that stakeholder information is coming from the project charter. Remember, the high level information only. As far as the project documents is concerned, we will have the requirement documentation and the stakeholder register. You are communicating about those requirements. What is the status on those requirements? How it is going? Do you have some questions? All of those things are part of your requirement documentation, right? So you need to concentrate on the requirements. Similarly, on the stakeholder register side, to whom we are communicating? We are communicating this information to the stakeholders, right? All that information is part of the stakeholder register. Only the high level key stakeholders were there in the project charter, but in the stakeholder register, we have the detailed list of all the stakeholders. Then we have the common inputs, we have the OPA and the EEF updates, which is, this is something which was common, I would say, in almost all the processes we have done till now. Okay, so now let's see the tools and technique. We have expert judgment, which is a common tool. See, in order to communicate effectively, we need some sort of information from with the expert, right? My mother proved to be an expert, my father was an expert who helped me, and my friend was also an expert in all those things about the projects which we have discussed till now. All of those things help us in the plan communication management as well. Same thing, it's a common tool. Like expert judgment, we have meetings also. So both of these are actually our common tools. Meetings, everything we do meetings all the time. Okay. As far as your next tool is concerned, we have interpersonal and team skills, which is communication style assessment, which is working with stakeholders to identify a preferred communication method, format, etc. See, every particular stakeholder has a certain preference. So it's your job as a project manager to make sure that you are assessing those things. How you are assessing those things? You have to talk with them. You have to discuss with them that what is your preferred method. Do you want an email? Last video of your plan and implement. Hello everyone. So now let's discuss an organization's political environment. What do I mean by that? Some stakeholders on your project or some people on your project are very powerful. So you need to understand the impact and the you need to be politically aware about your organization structure and also your client's organization structure if you are from the seller side. So make sure you know who all are the powerful people, talk with them, do the communication style assessment, discuss with them what are their needs and communicate accordingly. Then we have the culture awareness, which is planning the communication strategy by keeping in mind the cultural difference between the individual, groups, and organization. See, this is the time where we are dealing with multiple stakeholders. These multiple stakeholders are globally located, like they are in different parts of the world, and the culture is really very different. To be a successful project manager, to make sure your project is successful, you need to be culturally aware, you need to understand, you need to talk with people, think and think before you speak. That's a very a common adage which is used. So make sure that you are culturally aware, don't hurt anybody's sentiments. So understand the cultural difference and accordingly plan for the communications. Then we have the communication requirement analysis. Identify which stakeholder will get information, what kind of information they will receive, and how. So again, I would say from the communication requirement analysis, one of the important topic was the number of communication channels. This formula, which is n times n minus 1 by 2, is not given in the PMBOK 6th edition, but you will definitely get some questions on the communication channel. So be prepared for it. How do we calculate? So like what would be the a sample question would be, they'll say you are a project manager and you have 5 resources working on your project. Calculate the number of communication channels. So first of all, you need to identify how many number of people are involved. So I said you are a project manager and you have 5 resources. So the value of n is 6 over here. So just put in the formula. In order to calculate the communication channel, you just need to replace this n by 6. So it would be 6 times 6 minus 1, which is 5, divided by 2, which is 15. Then, so you'll get a lot of questions. This formula is actually given on your ITTO's mathematical sheet, so which is the 4th tab. Okay. Next, we have the communication technology, which is what technology the manager is using to communicate the message. See, there are many technologies these days which are involved. In order to communicate, we need to make sure that we include all those technology. We use the latest technology in doing like the effective communication. There are certain factors that determine the choice of a communication technology, like for example, the urgency of the communication. You want to provide information urgently, right? Then you would probably use some more sophisticated technology. Or sometimes the availability of technology. Is your technology available in your home country, or is your technology available on the environment you are working? Like ease of use, how comfortable it is, sensitivity, confidentiality, all these are very important factors while considering the communication technology. Then we have communication models, communication methods, which we would be discussing in the following slides. And then we have also have the data representation, which is stakeholder engagement assessment matrix. Very important. We will be discussing this in much more detail in the stakeholder management knowledge area. So stay tuned for that. So first we have the tool communication model. We have the sender receiver model. So how this works is, so first of all, sender will encode the message. They will encode the message in their preferred language or whatever, and then they will select a communication channel. Like for example, what I'm doing right now, I'm talking to you in a preferred language, which is English, so that you guys can understand. I'm encoding that message and I'm delivering that message to you. I send that message. it's your job as a receiver to decode that message, and you can only decode that message if you can understand, the language which I'm speaking over here. If I start talking in a different language which you don't understand, then the sender receiver model will not work. So your job is to decode, my job is to encode and send the message to you. That's your sender receiver model. Then on the other hand, we have the interactive communication model, which is, so in the sender receiver model, there was one problem. There might be some kind of noise in the background, which may not, in which the information is not clearly sent to you. So, and I'm not asking whether you understood or you did not understand, right? If you did not understand, I would probably have to send that information again to you. So, in order to overcome these issues, we will go into the next one, which is interactive communication model. So, in this, what we do, the sender, again, the same thing, the sender, which is me, I'll encode the message, I'll select a channel, and I'll send the message. Then, what I will do, I will confirm that the message was understood by you or not. So I will, by sending an acknowledgement. What is your responsibility on the receiver side is you would have to decode the message, and then you would have to confirm me back by giving me a feedback or a response. So in this way, if there was any noise or if you did not understand anything, based upon your feedback, I'll come to know that I would have to resend this information. So this is your interactive communication model. So this slide, which is the type of communicating process, it's not given in the PIMBOK 6th edition, but it's important. So you really need to understand this piece as well. So first we have the paralingual communication. So communicating through the volume or pitch of the voice. Like I will say the same statement, but in different pitch of my voice, and based upon that you would come to know whether I'm in a good mood or a bad mood. Like for example, I'm talking to you and I say, did you understand this message? So in this way, that Varun is very calm, and he is asking nicely, so that's fine. But same thing, same statement, I could say, did you understand the topic? So now that based upon my volume or pitch of the voice, that Varun is really angry, and I should give the message or reply back to him. So paralingual, based upon your pitch or volume of the voice, you come to know what I'm trying to communicate. Then similarly, we have the feedback. Feedback can be of two types: the verbal feedback as well as the non-verbal feedback. Like sometimes I'll just smile. I'll my asking questions. All of those things will actually deliver. Like sometimes when people ask me questions, I really come to know that that they are really understanding or not. So feedback is an important form of communication. Then we also have active listening. So active listening is, the active listener actually takes active steps to make sure that the message was understood. So I'm assuming you guys have a pen and paper and you're making your case notes and, your study notes along with that. So the receiver confirmed that the message was received. So you are communicating me back that, yes, Varun, I understood the message. That's your active listening. But on the effective listening side, to be an effective listener, it requires the receiver's full thoughts and attention. An effective listener provides feedback, asks questions, pay attention to the visual cues, pitch or tone of the speaker, and confirm that the message was received clearly. So effective listener, I would say it's one step above of active listening. You do all the steps in active listening, but you are much more concentrated on the communication process. Everything, this is the only thing you are doing. You are not doing multitasking. If you're doing some multitasking, that's not effective listening. So effective listening is when you are fully concentrated only on your goal, which is your PMP. Then we have the non-verbal, like the body language that will communicate. Sometimes, like when I'm teaching the class, I know that, oh, by the body language, I could understand, oh, this is a really interesting topic. The people are enjoying, they're asking me questions. Sometimes on the other hand, if I see the class is getting bored or something, I try to try to play some games and, make sure that the session is as much interactive as possible. So the body language, which is the non-verbal, this also gives us that whether you are getting the topic, getting the concept or not. Then we have the communication methods. So in the communication methods, we have three types: interactive, push, or pull. Interactive is like, something which is done in real time. Like for example, in meetings, we try to do interactive session in meetings. Like sometimes we give you a phone calls, and we do video conferencing. All those are examples of interactive. Push is on a little different, like something like the communication that is sent or distributed. Like for example, I'm not really sure, I sent you an email, but have you read it? I normally send that study plan, and until unless you reply back to me on those study plans stating that yes, I'm doing, Varun, these are my questions. All of those things are type of push communication. So email is the biggest example of push communication, where the person is not sure whether you understood, or that the email has reached out to you or not, or whether you have read it or not. Pull is always used for larger audience, like for example an intranet site or some kind of knowledge repository. Sometimes what happens is that I'm teaching a class where a lot of people are involved, from different all around the world. So I would say, okay, go to my website, and under the resources section, download the free ITTOs. So now that is pull communication, where I'm telling you to go somewhere and do something, right? I'm not really sure whether you did it or not, but it's totally up to you. That's your pull communication, which you use when the audience is large. So other than these communication methods, we also have the communication approaches, where we have the interpersonal approach. Like, we try to talk, with people, we try to get as much information as possible, we try to communicate with them. So that's on an interpersonal side. Then we also have small group communication, which is like, I am talking with small group, I'm not talking to a larger group. That's small group communication we do. Opposite of small group is actually the public communication, where I'm addressing a mass set of people, like I'm some kind of conference where I'm delivering a message. Then we also have, I think, mass communication, which is like, there is some minimal communication, but this also for a larger audience, and sometimes anonymously it is sent to a group. And I think there is one more communication approach, which is about the social networking, the social computing side, the networking side, where it is many to many relationship, just like your Facebook groups. You put question on our Facebook group, you will get a response from a lot of other students who are preparing. So that's all the communication approaches. I repeat, we have interpersonal, small group, public group, then mass communication, then I think the networking and the social computing side. Then we have some communication activities. So all of these are actually part of this, right? So we have the internal communication activities, like within the project team or within the organization. That's internal. External is sometime when we discuss with the customer or vendor or government or public. All those are external, which are not related to my project or which is not related to my organization. Then we have formal communication, which is like reports, the ad hoc formal meetings we do, the meeting agendas, all those are formal. Informal, on the other hand, like email, like the social media group, that's an informal. Like, the website, all of those are actually informal. Hierarchical focus is, based on upon the type of stakeholders or the format or the content. It's like upward. So first we have the upward. When I'm talking to my senior management, I would prefer to do a formal communication. When I do downward, I will be, I can do both formal as well as informal, but I would be a little more relaxed. But then horizontal is, when I'm talking to my peers, my colleagues in the organization. That's your hierarchical focus. Then if you remember, we have official, which is the annual reports, the companies, they publish their annual reports. That's your official communication. Then unofficial side, communication to build relationship between stakeholders and project team. Some unofficial, you go out for, lunches, the coffee breaks, and all those are unofficial. Then we have written and oral. Written and oral, it's like, the verbal and non-verbal, the body language, the social media, the website, the media releases, these all are written and oral. So let's discuss our outputs. So first we have the communication management plan, which will specify what information will be distributed and updated, in what format, how often, to which stakeholders or groups, and it will have the description of the communication models as well as the methods. Then our plan updates, we will update the plan as well, and the stakeholder engagement plan specifically. Initially we can say that the stakeholders were pretty much interested on a weekly file. Now he is interested in a monthly file, so we would have to update the engagement plan also. Then similarly we would have the document updates. Your schedule can get updated and your stakeholders might get introduced. Some more stakeholders might get introduced. That's your document updates. So let's do a quick revision. So know the formula to determine the number of communication channels on the project. It's very important. Again, it's not in PMBOK. The formula is not given, but it's a very important concept. Focus on the communication management plan as an output. Make sure that you read the bullet points from the PMBOK, which all are there in the communication management plan. Then understand the responsibilities in the communication model. There are different types of techniques in communication models and methods which are very, very, very important. So this marks the completion of plan communication management. Next we would be dealing with is the managed communication, where we would be going out and send that information to the team. So stay tuned for that. Thank you. Hello everyone. So now let's discuss the next process of communication management, which is managed communication. So in the previous process, we discussed about the plan communication management, where we discuss about that how we will communicate, how we will make sure that we are managing the communications in a proper way. Now after that, now it's the time to make sure that we send that information, what we have collected, what we have retrieve, how we can retrieve those things. All of those things are actually done in the managed communication process. So it's an executing process that follows the communication management plan. So communication management plan was all about how you would be doing the things. This process carries out the communication management plan. It creates, collect and distribute the information. So where do you create the information? Your answer should be managed communication. Where do you collect the information? It's managed communication. Where do you distribute the project information? It's managed communication. In plan communication management, you were all discussing about that how you will create, how you will collect, how you will distribute, how you will retrieve. So all of those things were how. But in managed communication, you're actually going ahead and doing the work. This process is performed throughout the project. Like if you ask me personally, I do that on a daily basis, and I'm assuming if you are from the same project management field, you would be doing this process throughout. What are the different benefits? The key benefit of this process is that it enables an efficient and effective information flow between the project team and the stakeholders. So to make sure you're doing the right thing, to make sure that there is a good information between, the flow of the information is accurate, this is where you will take care of it. Then flexibility is very, very important to handle some unplanned information requests. So your stakeholders might come up and say that, Varun, can you send this document to me, please? So again, you don't have to say no in those kind of scenarios. You have to be a little bit of flexible over here. But of course, if it requires too much work on your part, then you have to make sure that you follow the proper process for that. Then concepts in this process are more important to know than the actual input tools and outputs. So I've specifically mentioned about this. The ITTOs are, of course, no doubt your ITTOs are very important, because basically what we are doing, we describe those inputs, we describe those tools, and we describe those outputs. But more importantly, it's about concepts. So let's review the inputs, tools and technique, and the output. On the input side, we definitely have the project management plan. Of course, we will have the project documents, and then we will have the work performance reports. Always remember, we are sending the project information in managed communication process, right? We are sending it, and work performance report is something which is like a status report where you go ahead and send that information. Then you have EEF and OPA as the common inputs as well. As well as the techniques, tools and techniques is concerned, one thing that a lot of these tools and techniques were used in the planned communication management and would be used in the control communication process also. So communication technology, method, skills, project management information system, project reporting, interpersonal and team skills, and meetings. All of these are the tools and techniques which we would be using in this particular process. Then for the outputs, we have the project communications. Then we will have the plan updates and the document updates. Then common one would be your organization process assets updates. Okay, now let's see the input explanation. We'll probably discuss about those inputs in much more detail. Ask this question to yourself. Why do we have this input? Why do we have this tool? Why do we have this output? Once you ask these questions, a lot of your concepts, a lot of your doubts would actually get improved. So first we have the project management plan. We definitely need the resource management plan, which was the output of the previous process. Why? The resource management plan actually helped you to understand that how your resources are, right? How you are managing those resources, how you are controlling those resources. So in order to communicate, you need to know that information. Similarly, communication management plan, which was the output of your previous process, of course, it would be an input because that document told you how you will manage the communication. So you need to know that. And of course, you have the stakeholder engagement plan. As I told you, communication and stakeholders, they both run hand in hand. And it's very important to understand and discuss about the what is the expectation level of the stakeholders, and then only you can plan for it. As far as the document is concerned, change log is an important input over here. Why? In the change log, it would be mentioned the result of your change request, whether it is approved or it is rejected, whatever it is, it would be mentioned. Then you need to make sure that you are communicating that information from the change log. Then on the same hand, you will have issue logs. Whatever issues you have on the project, you will document that in the issue log. Then it's your job as a project manager to make sure that you communicate those issue log to the respective stakeholders. Then we have the lessons learned register, which is your whatever good things or bad things which have happened in your past projects. You need to make sure that you manage those communications so that you don't repeat the same mistakes what your other colleagues might have done in the past projects. Then we have quality report, risk report, and the stakeholder register. Because of this managing communication, you might end up adding some more stakeholders on the process. So but whom you are communicating this information, it's the stakeholder, right? So you need to know all the people on the project which will receive this information. So that's why you have the stakeholder register. Risk report will actually give you the entire risk value of the project, how risky this project is. So this is something which we'll be discussing in much more detail, but this is something which communicate that information. Then EEF and OPA are the common inputs where we would be discussing about the organization culture, or we'll be discussing about the PMIS, or the plans, the processes, and all those things. Work performance report, it's common. It's an important input because work performance report is all about your I would say your status reports and all those things which you send out to the stakeholders. I do that on a weekly basis. Okay, let's see the tools and technique. First, we have the communication technology, which we already discussed in the previous process, where we were talking about some of the factors that were determining the choice of communication technologies. If you remember, the urgency, the sensitivity, the ease of use of those technology, all of those were some of the examples. Then communication methods, we already discussed the communication methods. If you remember, we discussed all of those things. Then communication skills. The communication skills, we have the communication competence, which involves factors such as purpose of messages, leadership behaviors, effective relationship, and information sharing. So again, there are many factors which are involved in communication. Like for example, how your leadership is behaving, right? What is the effective relationship, and how you proactively share that information with your stakeholders. So all of those skills are very much important. Then feedback, non-verbal, all of those things we have already discussed. Presentation is a formal method to deliver an important information. So if you ask me what I'm doing right now, this is the presentation where I'm delivering those concepts to you. That's actually a type of communication skill. Then we have the common tool, which is your PMIS, which we discussed in much more detail in the integration management knowledge area. But don't forget, the keyword for PMIS was repository. Then we have some other tools and techniques. So first we have the project reporting. See, when you are managing the communication, basically what you are doing, you collect the information and you distribute that information. And that information is it's a form of reporting only. So if you see, reporting could be done in a bar graph, in a various pie charts, various diagrams. So like all those things. There are many ad hoc requests sometimes from the customer, and you can use any template, any form to report your project status. Then you have the interpersonal and team skills. Of active listening, we already discussed what active listening was. In order to be do the active listening, the listener has to take active steps to make sure that they understand the topic. You provide the feedback as well to make sure that you clearly understood. The conflict management, which we already discussed in the resource management knowledge area. Remember the forcing technique which we use: force, avoid, smooth, the problem solving. All those were some of the conflict management techniques. Then we should also take care of the culture, because we are in a we work in a virtual environment where a lot of our teams are working in different regions. They work from all parts of different worlds. So you need to be very I would say you have to be comfortable. You have to be very sensitive about the cultural things, about all the stakeholders which are working on your project. Then we have meeting management technique to make sure that meeting objectives are met effectively and efficiently. So there are different techniques which you need to take care of in the meeting management, like make sure you're sending the agenda prior to the meeting invite. Then if there are some digressors who are diverting the topic, make sure you are the one who are bringing those digressors on the topic again. So meeting management, like you set up some ground rules, all of those are part of your meeting management. Then we have the networking, which is a technique to develop/grow contacts and make sure information is exchanged in a timely and an efficient manner. So networking is very important, and I would say not just with communication, but on an overall side for project management, networking is very important. In this way, whatever I'm delivering the videos and lectures to you, this is a kind of networking also, right? We actually form a kind of a relationship where we are discussing about this PMP journey together. So that's also a type of networking. But if you see various PMI events, the local chapters, they do some networking events. So if possible, try to join those. Then we have a political awareness, which we already discussed in the previous process, which was about knowing the people, knowing the powerful people, understand the politics behind in the organization, and you need to be aware about those things. And of course, we have the meetings, which is I would say the common tool, which discuss about like whatever you need to do something, you first would have a meeting. You start with a meeting and then you define the action items and things like that. So as far as the output is concerned, so first we have the project communications, which is project communications like performance report. how your project is doing, your deliverable status. Is it on track, behind schedule, ahead of schedule? All those things, your presentations, all those things are part of your project communication. Then you have the project management plan updates. You'll go back and update your stakeholder engagement plan and communication management plan. So as I told you, communication and stakeholders are too tightly linked with each other. Then we have the project document update. So if you see, we have the your project schedule might get updated based upon managing communication. Your stakeholder might say that now I want this another status report which will cover about all these extra things. So you might have to add those tasks to your project schedule. Then sometimes you might identify some new stakeholders while managing the communication. Sometimes a stakeholder might come up to you and say that why don't you add this person also on your report, because he or she is also involved in this project. So that's an addition to your stakeholder list. Issue log, you need to make sure that whatever while managing the communication, if there is an update on the issue, you'll go back and update the issue log. Similarly, same reasons, lessons learned register. You may learn something new from this, so you'll go back and update your lessons learned register. And always, communication is a very risky thing. If the stakeholders don't get some kind of information in a timely manner, they will escalate it, and you don't want your project to be escalated, right? So again, there might be some cases where you have to go back and update your risk register as well. And then we have your OP updates, which is a common output. Okay, so let's do a quick revision. Know that this process identifies all aspects of effective communication, including the choice of appropriate technologies, methods, and techniques. So basically what they're talking about is the tools. You need to make sure that you're using the appropriate technologies, you have good methods, and the techniques which you are using. Familiarize yourself with the communication method. Again, one thing you should always remember, that the tools which we used in communication management plan, the previous process, and the tools which we use in managed communication, there was repetition of tools. Know the section on communication skills. Know that this process provides opportunities for stakeholders to make requests for further information, clarification, and discussion. So again, based upon whatever report or information you have sent out to stakeholders, they might come back to you and ask for additional information. So you should be planned for unplanned communication requests, and it's okay to provide and clarify that information. That's actually also part of your managed communication process. So this marks the completion of managed communication process. Then we will move to the next process, which is about the monitoring of communication. You need to do a comparison of planned and actual. What communication request was planned and what you actually did. That is your monitor communication. So stay tuned. Thank you. Hello everyone. So now let's discuss the last process of communication management, which is your monitor communications. So first of all, what we did, we made sure we planned for the communication, that how we will identify, how we will contribute, how we will collect the information, how we will send the information. So all of those things were first planned. Then from planning, we moved to the managed communication side, where we actually went ahead and collected and sent that information. So the real communication aspect was really done in the managed communication side. After that, now it's your job as a project manager to make sure that you monitor those communications as well. What was planned and what actually was done. Like for example, if a stakeholder requested for a report on a weekly basis, did you really send that report on a weekly basis or not? You as a project manager have to monitor that side of communication. If there are some issues, make sure you come up with a corrective action. If there are some issues, make sure you come up with some preventive actions so that you don't update the plan. All of those things are really very, very important. So it's a monitoring and controlling process that ensures information needs of the project stakeholders are met. So again, ultimately, the real purpose is to make sure that the project stakeholders, the needs are really met. We have a process group. So the process group used in this would be the monitoring and controlling. This process works throughout the project lifecycle. I would say almost on a daily basis, you have to monitor this. You need to make sure that if the stakeholder is coming up to you and asking you for relevant questions, you should be the one who will go back and reply, monitor the communication, make sure that the stakeholders are getting what they really want. So information flow, this process ensures optimal information flow. Whatever was documented in the plan communication management, that how you will do it, did you actually do that in managed communication? All those checking, all those comparison of planned and actual would actually be taken care in this monitor communication. Then it also ensures that right message is delivered to the right audience at the right time. So let's say there are two stakeholders, A and B. A and B. A asked for a report on a weekly basis. B asked for a report on a monthly basis. Now, A wanted to see that report in a, let's say, a PDF format. B wants to see that report in a, let's say, a Word file. Now, if the information of A, you sent it to B. So A was expecting that report in a weekly file, but you sent that report to A on a monthly basis. And you did a vice versa. To B, you sent that report in a PDF format and on a weekly basis. In this way, this means there is some issue. This means in the monitor communication process actually helps you to identify issues like these, to find out, to control what was the root cause, why you did the mistake, and if there is a mistake, how you can correct it. All of those things are actually part of monitor communication. So let's see the inputs of this process, the input tools and techniques of the, and of course the output. Remember, all of these inputs, tools, outputs, they are important. I'm not denying that, but the concepts is really very, very important. So ask these questions to yourself. Why do I have project management plan and project documents as an input? Why do I have work performance data as an input? Why do I have EFOP as an input? Why do I have expert judgment, project management information system, data analysis, interpersonal team skills and meetings as the tool and technique? Why do I get information as the output? Why do I get change requests as the output? And of course, you will have the plan and the document updates also as the output. Why? Understand this. Okay, let's now discuss the inputs. So first we have the project management plan. Let's see all those things which are part of the project management plan, which are the input. So which is your resource management plan, your stakeholder engagement plan, and your communication management plan. All of those things are very, very important to monitor your communications. Resource will tell you that what are the people, how you are communicating with those people specifically. Stakeholder engagement, how your stakeholders are effectively engaged, and communication, how you will control the communication. You need all of these information to make sure that you are monitoring your communication. They are getting what they should get. Work performance data, it's a common input. Always remember, in monitor communication or in a control process, you'll always have work performance data as an input. If data is an input, this will definitely get converted into work performance information. So you will see when we do the output, you will have work performance information as an output. On the project document side, you will have issue log. So issue log is something which you have to closely monitor. You have to make sure that those issues are rectified, and you have to if it is something related to communication, then you have to go out and communicate that information, right? So you have to closely monitor the progress of that communication. Then of course you have lessons learned register, project communications, which are important, because basically what you are doing, you're trying to control those communication, right? And whatever things you have learned from past, good or bad, you need to make sure you get all that information and do exactly the same way you did in the last project if it was good, and similarly opposite, you should not do the mistakes which you did in the previous projects. All that information would come from the lessons learned register. And then of course you have the EEF and the OPA, which are your common inputs. So let's see what are the different tools and techniques. First, we have the expert judgment. In order to monitor the communication, we might need some help of an expert who can guide us that how we can make sure that stakeholders are happy, they are getting what they should get, and if they are not getting, what is the root cause of that. So you may take the help of a expert to help you out with this. Next, we have the project management information system. So this is more like a keyword. The keyword is over here is your repository. So if you're trying to control something, you might be storing some information on the PMIS, right? So you need to make sure that you are controlling the communication. You have the tool where you are, saving all that important documents or, plans which you need to communicate. In the data representation, we will get the stakeholder engagement assessment matrix. So this is something, we will talk about that in much more detail when we do the stakeholder management. The interpersonal team skills, we have the observation and conversation. So this is something which we did in the scope management knowledge area. And if you remember, the observation and conversation was, the shadowing of a resource, right? We make sure that I assign a resource to shadow a particular resource from the client side, so that I could learn, see how they are doing the work and what are the issues, what is your preferred communication method, all those things, right? So again, interpersonal team skills, which is observation and conversation, will help you to make sure that you control those communication by observing things, by having a conversation, a frank conversation with a stakeholder, your sponsor or your customer. Then we have the meetings. Whatever you need to do, you first start with meetings, right? Whatever decisions you need to do, you probably do that in some kind of meeting. So meeting is an important and of course a common tool and technique for this. Then we have the outputs. So first we have the change request. It's a monitoring and control process. Remember, few things are always common, which is your change request would always be the output. Since work performance data was the input, you will definitely get work performance information as the output. As far as your project management plan is concerned, you will get the stakeholder engagement plan and communication management plan. They will definitely go ahead and you'll update it. So like for example, one of your stakeholder is initially was resisting to your project. Now it's more like supportive because of the excellent communication you have done. So you might have to go back to your stakeholder engagement plan. You might have to update that information. Similarly, your communication management plan might change because of the communication you are doing. The stakeholders might be happy or not happy. So accordingly, you would have to make the changes in these plans. As far as the document is concerned, when you control the communication, if you remember the same example, you sent out a report to a stakeholder, and that stakeholder told you that no, I was asking for a report on a bi-weekly basis. Why did you send me a report on a weekly basis, right? So this was an issue. So he or she might tell you that what, why don't you do one thing now, start sending this report to stakeholder A, which might be your his team member. Now you have to send him, it's a new stakeholder. Now you have to go back and update that name of that person to your stakeholder registry, right? Similarly, your issue logs might get updated. If you see that a stakeholder is not getting a report on a timely basis, then it's an issue. So you'll have to go back and update your issue log for that. Some good or bad things you might learn from this process, which will go and go ahead and get it updated in the lessons learned register. So let's do a quick revision. Know that this is a monitoring and controlling process. So first of all, this is a monitoring and control process, and the name is monitor communications. Be aware that it is performed throughout the life of the project. So this is something which is done throughout, not just on first day or second day. It's done throughout. Know that this process mostly results into updating the issue log. Of course, you sent some information which was not required, or you sent some information, or you did not send some information, you would have to go back and update your issue log with that. Know that since it's a monitoring control process, change requests will always be the output. And same thing, work performance data would always be the input, which will always get converted into work performance information. So this marks the completion of your communication management. Next thing, what you need to do is just do a quick revision of your notes, read your PMBOK, and then come to the website or download the app and practice the communication management knowledge area questions on your phone or on the simulator. Until and unless you solve the questions, I repeat, until unless you solve the questions, I really don't know whether you are getting the concept or not. Or in the same way, you really don't know whatever I'm teaching, you are getting the concept or not. You have to apply these logics, whatever you have learned, into solving the questions, because ultimately you have to sit in the PMP exam and you have to pass the exam. That's our ultimate end goal. Don't forget to join our Facebook or LinkedIn groups. Make sure you do that, and you will daily get a question of the day from our side. Thank you.